On a stormy night at Denver International Airport, Officer Olivia Barnes thought it was just another routine patrol with her K-9 partner, Ranger. But when the German Shepherd refused to move past a cargo hold, growling at the shadows inside, everything changed. Hidden among the suitcases was not just a desperate man, but a secret powerful enough to expose one of the largest drug cartels in the country. Within hours, Olivia and Ranger would be drawn into a battle of courage, justice, and survival that no one saw coming. This is a story of loyalty, danger, and the silent instincts of a dog who refused to be ignored. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments so we can see how far this story travels. Snow swept across Denver like an unrelenting tide, driven by winds sharp enough to carve steel. The city's lights flickered under the storm, roads slick with ice, and the great tented roof of Denver International Airport glowed ghostly against a slate-colored sky. On the tarmac, plows groaned, de-icing rigs hissed, and floodlights cut the blowing snow into silver shards. Every breath froze in the air, a reminder of winter's authority. Inside Concourse A, the warmth brought little comfort. Passengers sat wrapped in heavy coats, weary eyes fixed on departure boards that blinked delayed in amber. The air carried the bitterness of overbrewed coffee mixed with the chemical tang of de-icer clinging to boots. Voices frayed with impatience, children whimpered against their parents' shoulders, and even the employees moved with the stiffness of long hours. Amid the weariness strode Officer Olivia Barnes, her posture calm but commanding. At 37, she carried 12 years of law enforcement in the straightness of her back and the steadiness of her step. She was lean and athletic, auburn hair pulled into a tight knot, green eyes that missed nothing. A faint scar traced from the corner of her mouth, a gift from a broken bottle years ago. It left her expression permanently touched by resilience. She wore no jewelry except a plain silver ring, its meaning private, its presence constant. At her side moved Ranger, a 5-year-old German Shepherd with the confidence of a seasoned partner. His coat gleamed black and russet, muscles rippling under disciplined control. A scar beneath his right ear, nearly hidden by fur, hinted at his past. Found as a pup guarding an elderly woman lost in a fire, refusing to leave her side until rescue came. That stubborn loyalty had been sharpened into purpose. Tonight he wore a black tactical harness marked K-9 Unit, amber eyes glowing with intelligence. Ranger's senses were attuned not to explosives or narcotics, but to people, trained to read the tremors of hidden intent. The terminal around them pulsed with small stories. Melody Crane, a gate agent in her early 40s with dark skin and freckles, worked the desk with a smile that flickered under strain. Caleb Ortega, a young baggage runner with restless energy, shifted from foot to foot, his black hair tucked under a beanie. Nearby, Rob, a janitor in his 50s with broad shoulders and white stubble, guided his floor machine with deliberate patience. They were ordinary faces of the night shift, woven into the airport's rhythm. Olivia and Ranger walked their patrol route, the dog's movements fluid beside her. But then, almost imperceptibly, Ranger changed. His stride shortened, his tail lowered, his ears angled forward like antennas catching a hidden signal. Olivia felt the shift through the leash, a vibration, subtle but certain. "What do you smell, partner?" she murmured. Ranger ignored her voice, his nose working in sharp bursts. Coffee, jet fuel, wool, exhaust, then something else. His body coiled with intent. He pulled gently but firmly towards the glass doors leading to the service apron. Olivia followed, boots striking the tile. The doors hissed open, and a blast of icy wind stabbed her lungs. Outside, under the glare of floodlights, A narrow-body Airbus waited at gate A39. Its nose light glowed faintly, its tail dusted white. A belt loader extended its rubber tongue into the forward cargo hold, crates stacked along the ramp. Ground crew bustled in neon vests, their movements quick in the storm. Among them stood Corinne Corey Linklater, the ramp supervisor. Tall and wiry, late 30s, her cheekbones carved by years of weather, a steel ring through her brow catching the light. She had the look of someone raised among brothers, quick-eyed and resilient. She noticed the K9 team immediately. "Lose a suitcase that growls?" she called with a wry edge, voice muffled by her gaiter. Olivia raised her badge. "Hold your crew." Her tone brooked no argument. Corey stiffened but signaled her team. The belt stopped with a jolt, engines idling down. Caleb, standing near the tug, froze mid-step, uncertain. Behind the windows, passengers pressed closer to watch, faces glowing in the glass. Ranger moved forward, body taut, his ears locked on the yawning darkness of the cargo hold. His nose lifted, chest rising deep, fur along his spine bristling. A low growl rolled from him, steady and deliberate. Then he barked. The sound cracked across the apron, sharp and absolute. It ricocheted off the aircraft, startling the ground crew. Olivia braced the leash, calm but alert. "Show me, Ranger." The German shepherd barked again, claws raking at the belt's edge, amber eyes fixed on the black maw of the hold. His entire body declared a single truth. Something was inside. Olivia flicked on her shoulder lamp, casting a beam into the bin. Light caught the scuffed walls, a spilled paperback fluttering its pages, a scarf drifting near the edge. Then silence. Too deliberate, too human, pressed back. Ranger growled deeper, a sound vibrating like an engine of warning. Olivia felt her pulse quicken. She keyed her radio. "Barnes to ops. K9 alert, gate a 39 forward hold, possible unauthorized person." "Hold pushback," crackling voices replied. "Copy, units en route." But Olivia barely listened. Her eyes stayed locked on the darkness. Ranger's stance was unwavering, his bark a command no one could ignore. In that frozen moment, with snow whipping across the apron and the night holding its breath, everyone understood. The dog had found something hidden where no one else dared look. The apron lay hushed except for the hiss of snow and the low growl rumbling from Ranger's chest. Olivia kept her stance firm as more airport security arrived, their reflective jackets flickering in the floodlights. The first to step forward was Ethan Harris, a Transportation Security Administration officer in his early 40s. Tall and lanky, with shoulders that sloped forward as if weighed down by years of rigid regulations, he had a narrow face marked by deep worry lines. A neatly kept mustache decorated his upper lip, a feature often teased by colleagues, but worn with quiet pride. His gray eyes darted quickly, always calculating, and though his demeanor was polite with passengers, he carried an intensity born from a near-disastrous incident early in his career, when he had once missed a suspicious bag. That memory shaped his life. He trusted procedures more than instincts, and he clung to rules the way sailors cling to ropes in storm. "Barnes," Harris said, pulling his radio to his mouth. "Ops confirms pushback is frozen. We've got authorization to open the hold." Olivia nodded, her breath a plume in the cold. Ranger growled louder, nose fixed on the shadows inside the cargo bin. His body was taut, hackles raised, ears pinned forward like twin arrows. She gave the leash a slight tug. "Stay with me, partner." Another figure joined them. Jack Moreno, head of airport security for the night shift. In his early 50s, Jack had the build of a boxer gone slightly soft, with thick arms still knotted by muscle and a square jaw carpeted by 3 days of stubble. His dark hair was peppered with gray at the temples, and his deep-set brown eyes looked tired but alert. Jack was a man of blunt words and quick decisions, shaped by 2 decades as a Denver police officer before retiring early after a line-of-duty shooting had left him scarred. Not physically, but with a weight he carried silently. Among his colleagues, he was respected for his fairness and for never hiding behind a desk when something dangerous needed confronting. Jack gave a short nod to Olivia. "Your dog's onto something real. Let's move slow." 2 ramp workers disengaged the safety lock and swung the cargo hatch wider. Cold air rushed out, and the beam from Olivia's shoulder lamp cut deeper into the shadows. At first, there was nothing but stacked bins, scattered luggage, and the metallic glint of container straps. Then, movement. Small, hesitant, betraying a human shape pressed low between crates. Ranger erupted into a bark so sharp it made Caleb Ortega, still standing near the tug, stumble back. Olivia's eyes narrowed, her lamp fixing on the figure. "Step out now," she commanded, voice clear and steady. "Hands where I can see them." The figure stirred, then slowly unfolded itself. A man, thin to the point of gauntness, crawled forward on hands and knees before lifting himself unsteadily into the light. He was about 45, though his face looked older, weathered by hunger and fatigue. His cheekbones jutted sharply, skin pale with a sickly gray tone. Black stubble clung unevenly to his jawline, and his dark eyes darted nervously, wide with the cornered look of a fugitive. His hair, once thick, was now unkempt and greased flat against his head. A thin jacket clung to his bony frame, inadequate against the freezing cold. Sweat glistened at his brow despite the biting air, betraying fear more than exertion. "My name's Victor. Victor Hale," he stammered, his voice raw and uneven. He raised trembling hands into the light, his words tumbling out. "I'm not dangerous. I swear, I just needed a way out." Jack Moreno stepped closer, his tone hard but controlled. "A way out of what?" Victor's eyes flicked to Ranger, who growled again, teeth bared in a warning that froze him in place. "Debt," Victor whispered finally, his voice cracking. "I'm running from people I owe. They'll kill me. I thought if I could just hide on a flight, I'd be safe. Please, I'm not trying to hurt anyone." Olivia studied him carefully. Every detail, the twitch of his shoulders, the sheen of sweat on his temple, the restless dart of his gaze. Something in his posture was wrong. People hiding from debt looked desperate, yes, but not this terrified. Ranger's nose pressed forward, sniffing the air around Victor as though peeling away his excuses. "Who are you in debt to?" Olivia asked, her voice calm but probing. Victor hesitated, his jaw clenching, eyes sliding away. "Just wrong people," he muttered. Jack's tone sharpened. "That's not an answer." "Name's Hale." But Victor shook his head violently. "If I say their names, I'm dead." "You don't understand. I shouldn't have even said this much." Ranger barked again, a deep warning bark, his eyes locked on Victor's chest, nose twitching with every shallow breath the man drew. Olivia trusted that signal more than the man's words. Her instincts agreed. Something about Victor's story didn't add up. "Search him," Olivia ordered. Harris stepped forward, patting Victor down with professional thoroughness. Out of his jacket pocket came a folded wad of cash, damp with sweat, and a small pocket knife with a broken tip. No weapons beyond that. Yet Victor trembled as though he carried a greater weight than any knife could bear. As Harris handed Olivia the items, she asked quietly, "Why risk freezing to death in a cargo hold for this?" Victor's answer was halting. "Because if I stayed out there, they'd find me. At least in here I had a chance. Just a chance." His thin frame sagged, as if the admission drained the last of his energy. Snow swirled harder outside, and the apron lights cast long shadows. Olivia glanced at Jack, whose dark eyes studied Victor with the kind of gaze that could cut lies apart. "He's hiding something," Jack said bluntly. "Your dog knows it too." Olivia nodded slightly, tightening her grip on Ranger's leash. Then we dig deeper. And as Victor Hale stood trembling under the weight of eyes, floodlights, and the unrelenting gaze of a German shepherd, the night shifted. What had begun as a routine patrol was now a doorway into something larger, darker, and far from the simple story of a man fleeing debt. Snow continued to sweep across the apron in restless waves, the floodlights carving sharp shadows around the frozen figures of officers and ground crew. Victor Hale had been secured by 2 TSA officers, his wrists cuffed lightly but firmly, his thin body shivering not only from the cold, but from the weight of his own secrets. He hunched his shoulders, dark eyes flicking toward the plane's belly, as though something inside it still held him hostage more than any set of cuffs could. Ranger remained on edge, nose working tirelessly, his amber gaze fixed not on Victor now but on the darkness of the cargo hold. Olivia, her breath pluming in white bursts, gave a quiet command. "Search." The leash loosened slightly, and Ranger leapt into action, his paws padding across the conveyor belt with swift, precise movements. His tail stiffened, his ears locked forward, and his nose pressed to the cold metal floor of the bin. He moved past scattered suitcases, a toppled travel kennel, and a crate marked with faded stamps of foreign ports. Then he froze. His body went rigid, and the growl that followed vibrated deep in his chest. He scratched once, then again, claws scraping harshly against the side of a large wooden crate bound with steel straps. "Hold him steady," Olivia said, her green eyes narrowing as she studied the object. The crate stood waist-high, its wood darkened by weather, corners reinforced with metal. Faded letters, partly scratched away, suggested overseas origins, letters in Spanish and Portuguese that hinted at South America. 2 more crates sat beside it, each nearly identical, lined up like silent sentinels among the luggage. Jack Moreno stepped closer, his square jaw tightening. "That's no passenger baggage," he muttered. "Not by a long shot." His brown eyes, sharpened by years of police work, traced the seams of the boxes. "Seen too many shipments like this in my old days." "They're built to hide things," Ranger barked sharply, claws raking again, refusing to back away. Harris, the lanky TSA officer, shifted uncomfortably. "Might just be machinery parts," he offered, though his voice lacked conviction. His thin hands adjusted his gloves nervously, as if touching the crates themselves might infect him with liability. "No," Olivia said flatly. She trusted the dog more than paperwork, more than excuses. "These aren't random." "He's telling us something." She glanced toward Victor, who stood restrained a few feet away. His face drained of what little color it had left, sweat breaking across his brow despite the cold. "Open them," Olivia ordered. Corey Linklater, the ramp supervisor, hesitated before nodding. She fetched a crowbar from the maintenance cart, her wiry frame moving with both caution and determination. "Let's see what our friend here didn't want us to find," she said, her tone grim. With Jack steadying one side, Corey pried at the steel straps until they snapped with a metallic twang. The wood groaned as the lid was forced open. At once, a sharp chemical odor burst into the frigid air, acrid and choking, clinging to the back of the throat. Several of the ground crew gagged, pulling scarves and gloves tighter over their faces. Inside lay rows of vacuum-sealed packages, each brick-like and wrapped in layers of plastic. The stark white of the powder inside glared beneath the harsh lights. Ranger barked furiously, claws digging into the edge of the crate as if to drag every truth into the open. "Jesus," Jack muttered, his broad hands tightening around the crowbar. "That's not sugar." Olivia didn't flinch, her voice calm but edged with steel. "Cocaine, and a lot of it." She looked back at Victor Hale, whose trembling lips parted in protest, though no words came. His dark eyes were wide, haunted, like a man watching his last excuse collapse in front of him. Harris, pale beneath the floodlight, reached for his radio with shaking fingers. "Ops, confirm immediate lockdown at gate A39. Possible narcotics seizure. We need DEA notified. Repeat. DEA Victor broke then," his voice rising in a frantic plea. "I didn't pack those! I swear, I just needed to get out, that's all. I don't know what's in there. I don't!" Jack stepped forward, his shadow falling over Victor. "Save it. You don't sweat like that over crates you don't know. You're running with people dirtier than debt collectors." His tone was rough, his brown eyes drilling through the man's panic. Olivia said nothing at first, letting Ranger's barking and growls fill the silence. She studied Victor's posture, the hunch, the darting gaze, the way his thin frame seemed to curl inward, like a man shrinking under the weight of more than just cold air. Finally, she spoke quietly. "You weren't hiding from debt. You were hiding with the product." Victor's knees nearly buckled, and only the TSA officers gripping his arms kept him upright. "They'll kill me if I talk," he whispered hoarsely. "You don't understand. These crates, they're just the start." His voice cracked, and his dark eyes brimmed with terror. The snow swirled harder, whipping across the apron. Olivia tightened her grip on Ranger's leash. The dog, his chest heaving, stood at the edge of the crate like a sentinel, his golden eyes locked on the bricks of poison that gleamed like death under the lights. The night had shifted once more. What began as a strange bark in the terminal had now uncovered a drug shipment large enough to feed a network. And Olivia knew, as she looked from the crates to Victor Hale's broken frame, that the true danger was only beginning. The discovery of the cocaine sent a ripple of urgency through every department in the airport. Floodlights burned harsher against the snow as the crates were sealed again under evidence tags, and uniformed officers moved with tight focus, securing the area. Ranger paced along the belt loader, his amber eyes flicking between the seized shipment and Victor Hale, as though he could smell the thread connecting man to poison. Olivia stood steady beside him, her gloved hand resting on the leash, green eyes locked on Victor's trembling frame. Victor Hale sat slumped on a metal bench near the service truck, his wrists cuffed, his thin frame bent under the weight of exposure. Under the sterile light, his face looked even older than before, cheekbones jutting like blades under sickly skin. Sweat clung to his temples, matted dark hair plastered against his forehead, and his lips twitched with the effort to hold back words. For all his attempts at silence, fear betrayed him. Jack Moreno leaned against the side of the truck, arms crossed over his thick chest. His square jaw, lined with gray stubble, worked as he chewed the inside of his cheek. He was a man who had seen too many interrogations, both in the precinct and on the street, and he knew when someone was one push away from breaking. "You're shaking like a man with nothing left to gamble, Hale," Jack said evenly. "Better start talking before your bosses decide you're not worth the debt you cost them." Victor's dark eyes shot up, fear flaring. "You don't know them," he rasped, his voice cracked from cold and nerves. "You don't know what they'll do." Before Jack could reply, another figure joined them. Special Agent Dana Kessler of the DEA stepped out of the SUV that had pulled onto the apron. She was in her early 40s, tall and slim, with an angular face framed by straight chestnut brown hair pulled back into a severe bun. Her pale skin carried freckles across her cheeks, softened by sharp hazel eyes that missed nothing. She wore a tailored black coat over a tactical vest, and her presence carried the weight of someone accustomed to command. Her reputation preceded her, relentless, uncompromising, molded by years dismantling cartel operations. A scar near her collarbone, barely visible beneath the edge of her coat, told of a raid in Mexico where she had barely escaped alive. That brush with death had sharpened her already unyielding resolve. She tolerated no half-truths. "Victor Hale," Kessler said coolly, pulling off her gloves and tucking them into her belt. Her voice carried the sharp edge of a blade. "Born St. Louis, 1979. First arrest, illegal weapons possession at 21. Served 5 years in federal. Later, smuggling charges, 2 stints overseas, skipped parole twice. You've been on our list for a decade, and here you are, caught by a dog sniffing at crates. You want to tell me how pathetic that looks?" Victor flinched, his dark eyes narrowing, his lips pressing tight. Kessler stepped closer, her hazel gaze burning. "You're not some runaway debtor. You're a mule, a runner for something far bigger. Those crates weren't yours, but you know exactly whose they are. So you're going to talk. Because if you don't, the people you're scared of, they'll finish the job prison started, and nobody here is in the mood to clean up your corpse in the morning." Ranger growled low, circling closer to Victor, as if punctuating the agent's words. Victor's jaw trembled. He looked from Olivia's calm, unblinking stare to Jack's cold impatience, then finally back to Kessler's piercing hazel eyes. "Montana," he whispered finally, voice hoarse. "They run it out of Montana. Not just one place. There's a hub, a warehouse in the woods, east of Billings. They bring it in through freight, hide it in shipments of lumber and farm machinery. I just move it along." Jack's lips curled into a grim line. "So that's the truth." A little colder than unpaid debts, Kessler crouched to Victor's eye level, her angular features sharp under the light. "Who runs it?" Name's Victor shook his head violently, his gaunt body twitching like a man pulled by invisible strings. "I can't. You don't understand. They find out I said a word. I'm finished. They kill families. They make you disappear like smoke." Kessler's tone cut him again. "Better your words kill them than their silence kill you." Olivia finally spoke, her calm voice carrying the authority of trust. "Ranger knew you were lying. He smelled it on you before anyone else did. And he's not wrong. You can give us a name, or you can let your silence keep protecting people who don't care if you're buried in the snow tonight." Victor's breath came shallow, his eyes glistening with panic. For a moment, he looked like he would collapse under the weight of his choices. Finally, he whispered a name. "Calderon. Arturo Calderon. He runs it, calls himself a businessman, imports, exports, lumber mills, but he's the one who ties it all together." Jack exhaled slowly, the name heavy in the cold air. Kessler rose, pulling her phone from her coat pocket. "I know that name," she said grimly. "We've had whispers about Calderon for years, but nobody's ever tied him to shipments this size. Until now," she typed quickly, sending the intel to headquarters. Victor slumped forward, his thin frame sagging against the cuffs. "You don't know what you've started," he muttered. Ranger gave one last bark, sharp and commanding, before settling at Olivia's side, eyes still locked on the man. The night on the apron grew colder, the snow harsher, but the trail was now clear. This was no small operation. The crates were only the beginning, and the name whispered in fear would lead them out of Denver's frozen airport into the heart of Montana, where shadows much darker than Victor Hale were waiting. The snowstorm over Denver began to ease by dawn, but inside the airport the tension only sharpened. The crates of seized methamphetamine had been hauled into evidence trucks, sealed under DEA authority, and armed officers now patrolled the hangars. Victor Hale was transported to a federal holding facility under heavy guard, his muttered warnings echoing in Olivia's mind. Ranger sat alert at her side, eyes bright, ears swiveling at every new sound, as if he knew the game had shifted from an arrest to a hunt. Special Agent Dana Kessler wasted no time. By mid-morning, she had assembled a joint task force briefing in a secured conference room at the airport. Around the long table sat a mixture of DEA operatives, airport police, and federal marshals, their heavy coats draped over chairs, steam rising from cups of bitter black coffee. Olivia stood near the head of the table with Ranger at her side, while Jack Moreno leaned in the corner, his broad arms crossed. At the far end sat Agent Marcus Doyle, a federal marshal in his late 40s. Marcus was tall and broad-shouldered, with thinning blonde hair slicked back and a stern jawline marked by a deep cleft. His eyes were pale blue, cold but observant, and his neatly trimmed beard added weight to his weathered features. Years ago, he had lost his partner in an ambush during prisoner transport, and the guilt still shadowed his sharp, disciplined manner. He spoke rarely but directly, earning both respect and distance from those around him. Beside him, a young DEA analyst clicked through photographs projected on the wall. She was Lena Ortiz, 29, of medium height with olive-toned skin and long black hair tied in a ponytail. Her brown eyes were quick and restless, her voice soft but precise. A prodigy with logistics, she had grown up watching her father, a truck driver, struggle under corrupt companies smuggling contraband. That history fueled her relentless dedication to dismantling supply lines. The screen showed satellite images of freight activity, maps of distribution hubs, and photographs of the wooden crates. The packaging style is consistent with South American export concealment, Lena explained, her tone matter-of-fact. The Denver shipment wasn't isolated. Records show similar containers have been moved through freight depots in Chicago and Seattle over the last 6 months. Kessler tapped the table sharply with a pen. And where does it converge? Lena clicked again, showing grainy images of a rural compound east of Billings, Montana. A cluster of warehouses sat near the tree line, surrounded by gravel roads. Here, a property registered under Calderon Timber Exports. Officially, it's a lumber storage yard, but surveillance shows nighttime truck activity, far beyond normal capacity, and not one legitimate timber shipment has been logged leaving the site in over a year. Marcus Doyle's voice cut in, low and commanding. So it's not lumber moving in and out. It's product. Kessler's hazel eyes swept the room. This is our hub. This is where Calderon runs his distribution. We hit it hard, but we need to be smart. If we spook them, they scatter, and we lose the bigger fish. Jack Moreno shifted against the wall, his brown eyes hard. You'll need someone who knows how these guys move trucks and cover their routes. They're not amateurs. I've seen warehouses like this hide entire arsenals. Ranger suddenly gave a sharp bark, startling a few around the table. Olivia crouched, steadying him with a hand against his harness, his golden eyes fixed on the projection of the warehouse. It was as if he understood the target as clearly as the humans did. Olivia gave a small smile, murmuring, "We've got your nose for the lead, partner." By afternoon, the task force moved from plans to action. Ranger was guided through one of the airport's freight depots as a test. His nose pressed along crates stacked for outbound flights, his gait focused. Suddenly, he stopped at 3 containers marked for New York. His bark echoed against the steel walls, claws scraping. When the seals were broken, officers revealed another hidden stash. Smaller, but enough to confirm the network stretched farther than Denver. The evidence was undeniable. The Calderon operation used legitimate cargo routes to mask narcotics shipments nationwide. The convoy rolled out of Denver under heavy snowfall, SUVs with tinted windows plowing north through endless white highways. Olivia rode with Ranger in the back, her green eyes fixed on the blur of landscape. Jack sat up front, scanning the road with the wary patience of a man who had lived too many ambushes. Kessler coordinated through her phone, while Marcus Doyle drove with precise, almost mechanical movements. Montana loomed colder, its forests heavy with snow, mountains rising like watchful giants. By nightfall, the convoy reached the outskirts of Billings. From there, they switched to unmarked trucks and vans, careful not to draw attention on rural roads. Lena Ortiz guided them with maps and GPS coordinates, her calm voice steady through the radio. When they finally pulled off onto a dirt track, the target came into view. The warehouse compound crouched at the edge of a pine forest, its corrugated walls half buried in snow. A chain-link fence surrounded the property, gates reinforced with heavy locks. A few dim lights glowed above loading bays, and tire tracks showed recent movement. Ranger stood at the van's door, ears erect, body tense. His nose worked against the cold air, and a growl rumbled low in his chest. Olivia stroked his fur, feeling the vibration of instinct through her gloved hand. "You smell it, don't you?" "This is where it leads." Marcus lowered his binoculars. 2 guards at the front, one pacing the gate, the other smoking by the bay. Both armed. Looks professional. Kessler's jaw tightened. "This isn't a timber yard. It's a fortress, and tomorrow night, we'll breach it." The snow whispered through the pines, carrying Ranger's soft growl into the darkness. The trail had led them here, to Montana's shadowed heart, where Calderon's empire stood waiting. The night descended over Montana with a merciless edge. Snow whirled down from a sky the color of iron, whipped into furious spirals by the wind. The forest surrounding Calderon timber exports bent and groaned beneath the storm. The compound itself loomed like a fortress, its corrugated steel walls silvered by floodlights half swallowed in white haze. The storm was the kind of barrier that could halt armies, yet inside the task force convoy, no one spoke of retreat. Olivia sat in the back of an unmarked van, her green eyes scanning the storm through the frosted glass. Ranger stood pressed against her leg, his powerful chest heaving slow, deliberate breaths. His fur bristled with the charge of anticipation, amber eyes glowing under the dim red interior light. Every muscle in him was wired, alive, as though he could sense the storm was not just weather. It was the curtain rising on what lay ahead. Special Agent Dana Kessler stood at the front of the van, her tall frame rigid in a black tactical coat. Her hazel eyes burned with focus as she spread a map across the hood of a laptop. The storm made her sharp features look even harsher, her freckles muted in the dim light. "We move now," she said, her voice clipped. "The storm is cover. They won't expect us in this weather." Marcus Doyle, the federal marshal, adjusted the strap of his rifle, his pale blue eyes narrowing beneath a knitted cap. "Visibility's near zero. If something goes wrong, we'll be fighting blind." His deep, gravelly voice carried the weight of the loss he still carried from years ago, his distrust of chaos etched into every word. Jack Moreno grunted, leaning forward in his seat, the stubble on his jaw catching the light. "If we wait, Calderon's people will scatter with the product. The storm will bury their tracks, and we'll be left holding nothing but snow." She's right. "We strike now." In the back, Lena Ortiz tapped her tablet nervously. Her brown eyes flicked between the satellite map and the blizzard outside. "Thermal imaging is useless in this. The cold masks body heat, but—" Her slender fingers pinched the screen, highlighting the faint glow of trucks parked in the bays. "They're home. At least 24 inside. Maybe more." Olivia bent low, murmuring to Ranger, her gloved hand running along the ridge of his harness. "It's you and me, partner. Keep us alive in there." The dog licked the back of her glove once, then lowered his head, muscles taut with purpose. The strike team disembarked into the storm, rifles cradled, boots crunching in snow up to their calves. Wind clawed at their coats, plastered snow to their masks. They spread out, dark figures swallowed by white, circling the compound like wolves. Ranger led Olivia through the drifts, his powerful body cutting a path as if the blizzard bent around him. The first shot of action came when Ranger froze, head whipping toward a shadow by the chain-link fence. His growl vibrated against the howl of wind. Olivia raised a fist, signaling halt. Out of the snow stumbled a guard, mid-30s, burly with a thick beard iced over by frost. His coat flapped open, revealing a rifle. Ranger barked once, explosive and sharp, the sound slicing the storm. Before the man could raise his weapon, Marcus and Jack tackled him into the snow, cuffs biting into his wrists. The storm swallowed his curses before they could spread. They pressed on. The breach team set charges at the side bay doors. A muffled countdown crackled over radios, and then steel groaned, split open with a shriek, and the night erupted. Inside, the warehouse was chaos incarnate. Floodlights flickered against stacks of crates, shadows racing along beams. Ranger charged forward, barking furiously, his voice echoing like a battle horn. He veered left, claws skidding on the concrete, and drove Olivia straight toward a cluster of armed men crouched behind crates. His barks gave them away before they could spring an ambush. Federal rifles lit up the dark, and the criminals dropped their weapons under the crack of gunfire and Ranger's relentless advance. 10 men, then 12, then more emerged from hiding spots, some firing blindly, others throwing up their hands. The storm outside masked the sound, but inside the warehouse it was deafening, the clash of boots, the clatter of steel, the shouts of surrender. Ranger lunged at a man attempting to reach a pistol, his teeth bared in a flash of fury. Olivia's sharp command held him at bay, just long enough for an officer to slam the man to the floor and cuff him. Dana Kessler moved like a blade through the chaos, her hazel eyes cutting over every crate, her voice shouting orders with steel. "Secure the evidence! No one touches the trucks." Marcus held the front line, his pale blue eyes narrowed, rifle steady, while Jack stormed through the aisles, his massive frame dropping anyone who resisted. Lena, though not a fighter, stayed behind cover, directing movements through her headset, guiding the team like a conductor with a map of ghosts. By the time the storm outside reached its peak, the warehouse was theirs. More than 10 criminals lay cuffed on the concrete, their breath fogging in defeat. Dozens of crates were split open under the lights, each one packed with narcotics, bricks upon bricks wrapped in plastic. Between them were caches of rifles, stacks of currency bound in rubber bands, and ledgers detailing shipments that stretched across states. Ranger stood in the center of it all, chest heaving, amber eyes blazing, his bark echoing one final time in triumph. Olivia crouched beside him, her hand pressing into his fur, her voice low but filled with pride. "Good work, partner. Couldn't have done it without you." The storm raged on outside, erasing tracks, swallowing sound. But inside, under the harsh light of victory, the network's fortress had fallen. The storm had passed, leaving the Montana landscape smothered in white silence. The warehouse compound now stood under federal control, its gates broken, its secrets dragged into the light. Trucks loaded with evidence pulled out under escort, and more than a dozen arrested traffickers sat shackled in transport vans, their shouts muffled by the cold glass. What remained was the aftermath, a quiet that felt almost holy after so much violence. Olivia stood at the edge of the yard, snow crunching beneath her boots. Ranger sat pressed against her side, the rise and fall of his chest steady after the night's exertion. His amber eyes scanned the horizon, ears flicking at every faint sound. Even in stillness he was vigilant, a sentinel forged by loyalty. Olivia's gloved hand rested on his harness, pride and gratitude mingling in her heart. Special Agent Dana Kessler coordinated with her team, her sharp hazel eyes never softening even in victory. Her black coat whipped around her tall frame, her voice crisp as she spoke into her radio, ordering the evidence transferred and detainees secured. She allowed herself a single glance toward Olivia and Ranger. For the first time, a faint smile cracked her severe features. "Your dog's instinct saved us all," she admitted quietly. Nearby, Marcus Doyle stood with his rifle slung across his chest, his pale blue eyes gazing at the compound. The stoicism on his weathered face masked the weight of relief. He was not a man who celebrated openly. His grief from losing his partner years ago remained carved into him. Yet in the way he nodded once at Olivia, there was recognition. A soldier's salute to another who had carried the fight. Jack Moreno brushed snow off his thick jacket, his square jaw set as he oversaw detainees loaded into vans. His brown eyes, always watchful, flicked toward Olivia. "You and that dog. You cracked open something bigger than anyone thought possible," he said. "That kind of work doesn't go unnoticed." Within days, the operation became national news. Reporters descended on Denver and Billings, cameras flashing, headlines blaring about the largest narcotics seizure in the Northwest in decades. Arturo Calderon, the elusive kingpin, had escaped the compound, but his network was shattered. Bank accounts were frozen, lieutenants arrested, and shipments cut off. For the first time in years, the cartel's grip on the region was broken. The press seized on one story above all: the German shepherd who had refused to ignore what others dismissed. "The Silent Guardian," newspapers called him. Ranger's photograph spread across headlines, amber eyes bright, ears erect, muzzle flecked with snow. A week later, the city of Denver hosted a ceremony at the courthouse steps. The storm had given way to clear skies, the mountains behind the city glittering white against the blue. Flags hung at half-staff in honor of fallen officers elsewhere, but today's gathering was for celebration. Rows of uniforms stood in formation, badges gleaming in the winter sun. Olivia wore her dress blues, her auburn hair pinned neatly, green eyes shining with restrained emotion. Ranger stood at her heel, polished harness gleaming, tail swishing lightly as if sensing the weight of the occasion. Among the crowd were familiar faces. Melody Crane, the gate agent whose steady patience had first witnessed Ranger's alert. Caleb Ortega, the baggage runner, his restless energy subdued by pride. And Rob, the janitor, thick-shouldered and humble, hands clasped before him as though this were a church service. Each had been touched in some way by that night at the airport, and each now stood witness to its conclusion. The mayor spoke first, a polished figure in a tailored coat, praising the bravery of federal and local forces. Then Kessler stepped to the podium, her severe voice softened for once. "We rely on training, strategy, and intelligence," she said. "But sometimes what saves lives is instinct, pure and unshakable. This dog reminded us that courage doesn't always wear a badge on its chest. Sometimes it walks on 4 paws." Finally, Olivia approached the microphone. She glanced down at Ranger, who sat tall, golden eyes fixed on her as though waiting for her words too. Her voice carried steady across the crowd. "Ranger isn't just a dog," she began. "He is a partner. A guardian. He listened when the rest of us were too distracted to see. He reminded us that sometimes God sends angels, not with wings to fly above us, but with fur, with bright eyes, and with hearts that will never give up on us. He's proof that loyalty and love are the strongest weapons we have." The crowd fell silent then erupted into applause. Cameras flashed, children cheered, and Olivia bent down to stroke Ranger's head. His ears flicked back briefly, then forward again, his gaze proud and unflinching. In that moment, beneath the winter sun, the story was complete. A dog who had barked at shadows and uncovered the truth, a handler who had trusted him, and a network of crime undone because of it. Ranger, the silent guardian, had become a symbol of hope. In the quiet after the storm, Ranger's story reminds us of something greater than victory over crime. It reminds us that sometimes God sends miracles in forms we don't expect, not in blinding light or thundering voices, but in the steady bark of a loyal dog, in the courage of ordinary people, and in the faith that goodness will always rise against darkness. Every day, each of us walks through struggles, debts, fears, loneliness, or battles we never speak aloud. But just as God guided Olivia and Ranger to uncover the hidden truth, He walks beside us too, guarding our steps in ways we may never see. His angels do not always wear wings. Sometimes they guard the gates of our lives with 4 paws, bright eyes, and unwavering love. So as you return to your own life after this story, remember, miracles are closer than you think. They live in loyalty, in courage, and in the unseen ways God protects us all. May the Lord bless and protect every one of you watching this. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to share it, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so more people can feel this message of hope. Let's spread faith, courage, and light together.